Here's a quick history on this old barn. It's roughly 90 to 100 years old. Originally it was in the front of the property and probably belonged to the neighbor. Maybe 50 or 60 years ago, when the main house was built on the property, the barn was moved to the backyard and set on a cinder block foundation. It had a dirt floor, kind of sand and gravel. And when I moved in, I'm the third owner. When I moved in about 25 years ago, I turned it into my wood shop and I put down a 3/4 inch plywood floor. The framing is treated 2x8s, and over the 2x8s a plastic vapor barrier, and then the 3/4 inch plywood floor, and that's held up great. Last year when I put the dust collection under the floor, I did an inspection of all the floor joists and they're in great shape. It's very dry here because the barn sits kind of on the top of a hill, so there's no water or moisture that collects, and that's always a big thing. With wood, you want it to be dry. Moisture is the enemy. So anyway, the outside measurements of this barn are roughly 16 by 32, and this area back here was a covered porch, and at one time it had been closed in, and for me I just turned it into kind of a catch-all space. It was like a big closet. And so where I'm standing right now was the back of the shop, and that made the inside measurements of the shop roughly 15 by 24, which is pretty small. And so last year I decided to take that wall down and gain all this space, and it's made a huge difference. I mean, the shop just feels so much bigger, and the nice thing about that is I don't feel like I need to move into a bigger shop any longer. I used to think that. Now the inside of the shop is, 15 by 31 maybe, and it's a good sized shop. So anyway, when I took that wall down though, I was left with the foundation sticking up about 1 inch running through the middle of the shop here. So in this video, I'm going to pad up the back floor and create a transition between the new back area and the old shop floor. I'm going to need to pad the floor up a little to get over the old foundation, so I'll start by ripping strips of 2x4 at just a little under 1 inch. I'll attach the strips to the floor with 2.5 inch screws, screwing through the old subfloor and into the joists underneath. After attaching all the filler strips, I'm ready to put down the plywood. This project took exactly 4 sheets of plywood, and it was one of those rare times where there was almost no waste. I ripped this full sheet of plywood to fill the space by the wall. The plywood will overhang the old foundation by about 1.5 inches, so I can sneak in a support between the old shop floor and the new plywood. It was just a lucky break that the space between the new plywood and the old shop floor is 1.5 inches, the same thickness as a 2x4. To create a gradual transition between the floors, I'll need to rip a 2x4 at an angle. I'll set the fence of the saw at 3/8 of an inch and the angle of the blade at 7 degrees to make this rip. That's a lot of material to cut at once, so I'll make this rip in 2 passes. After making the rip on the table saw, I needed to use my hand plane to smooth it out and finish the job. Once the transition piece was attached, I still had a 3/8 of an inch bump where the transition met the floor of the shop. To fix that, I used a piece of the offcut from the original transition molding and used it as a filler. To finish it up, I added a piece of 3/8 plywood with a 45-degree angle cut at the bottom of each side, and that worked pretty good. A quick shout out to my son Walter for making this pocket clip for my nail gun. For whatever reason, my 18-gauge Porta-Cable nail gun didn't come with a pocket clip, and it's just really convenient to be able to hang your nail gun on your pocket. So my son Walter made me one on the 3D printer. If you've got the same gun as I do and you need a pocket clip, click on the link in the description and that will take you to his store. I still had a little bit of a lip at the bottom and probably just enough to catch the wheel of a caster. So I taped it out, added a bead of Total Boats Fixo epoxy, spread it out with a putty knife, and I think that's going to work pretty good, but we can check back on it in a few months. Okay, well, I'm happy to have the floor finished and the shop finally just about done. I started this project a little more than a year ago. I am going to refinish this piece of furniture. This is one of the first big pieces of furniture I made almost 30 years ago, maybe more than 30 years ago. Anyway, I did talk about it on my second channel. I built this way before I even had a nail gun, so there's a lot of little bits of bead molding and cove molding, and it's all done with a hammer, nail, and a nail set. So if you want to know more about some of the details of this piece, click on the link to my second channel in the description below and it'll take you over there. I am going to start refinishing this probably tomorrow. I already stripped some of the finish off one of these doors just to get a look of it. I actually was thinking about getting rid of this. I talked about it on Instagram. But a lot of people are like, you should really keep that. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, yeah, why not? I think it will look good when it's refinished. This was like the big deal back in the 80s to make things out of knotty pine. And then this kind of whitewashed finish was called pickled. So it was like a pickled finish with this kind of very fancy hardware. So I'm going to just strip all the finish off of it, clear it, and then change the hardware out to probably simple wooden knobs. But there's just a lot of great storage. I talk about the drawer building in the second channel, how I am a big fan of wood on wood drawer slides, because 30 years later, a lot of abuse, a lot of use, and these drawers are still working great. So anyway, that's next time. Hope you'll tune in for that, and I'll see you then.